You were born in California, right?
Yes, I was.
Okay. How was your childhood?
I had a very interesting childhood. I was born in Fountain Valley, California, and my mom was a professional billiards player.
Wow, this is...
She's a two-time world champion.
Wow.
She's in the Hall of Fame. She's one of the greatest players of all time. And so...
Did you go with her to the tournaments?
I did. When I was really little, I not all the time, but
Okay.
there were a few. I remember one especially. It was in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was my first tournament that I'd gone to with her. I think it was for my 7th birthday. And in my mind, my mom always won.
Okay.
I mean, my mom wins. She's the greatest. She's the greatest. She never loses. And she was down to the finals. It was between her and a player named Gerda Hofstetter, and they were the last two. And Gerda won. And my little 7-year-old heart was just broken. I just burst into tears. I was just so sad. I was crying. My mom came to me. She hugged me. And immediately at 7 years old, I saw her opponent as the enemy.
Of course.
I was like, why did you do that to my mom? Like,
because it's my mom.
It's my mom, and you're the enemy, and I can't like you. And so that was a great learning moment for me at such a young age where, my mom's a sportsman. And so she had to sit me down and say, like, no, honey, we're all friends. Like, all these girls on the tour, like, we hang out afterwards and go to dinner and watch movies in our hotel room and make popcorn, and we're all friends. Like, this is just friendly competition. So sometimes I win, sometimes I lose, but if somebody beats me, they just play better that day, and there's another tournament coming, and we all go out and congratulate each other and have dinner, and a lot of these players ended up becoming like they were my tias and tios, and because they're so close on the tour, that it gave me especially because of going into acting and being in such a competitive world myself, it was a great lesson to learn, like, hey, when you go in and you see a room full of people going for the same role as you or going for this, you can make it a friendly competition. Just because somebody booked the role, you don't have to be like, I don't want to be around. So I had a lot of friends growing up in the business, and we would, go out for the same roles a lot. And
of course.
I think that was a nice lesson for me to learn. Hey, this is a sport, and at the end of the day, it's friendly competition, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It doesn't have to.
It was a great lesson, especially on that age.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about ages and all the things that a kid can learn, like your son.
Yep.
So it was 7 years, that lesson.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. And are you a good pool player?
I can beat my friends. Pool is a difficult sport because it's not like riding a bike. I mean, you really have to devote your time to it. And when you go away from it for a while and come back, you gotta get back in stroke, and you're rusty. But when I'm playing on a consistent basis, I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. But so my mom was a professional billiard player. My dad had just lost a successful furniture business that he had been working on, that he owned, and I was the baby of the family. And then at about 4 years old, my mom and my dad started having issues in the marriage, and decided to separate. And because my mom was touring so much, I spent a lot of time with my dad. And my dad was really really a fan of baseball, and played baseball when he was younger and in college. And my grandpa, my dad's side of the family was a baseball family. My cousin actually ended up going on to be an all-star baseball player for
Okay.
the major leagues and became a world-renowned pitcher for, I think he ended up on the Padres. But so my dad got me into Little League and was trying to find things to do with me that we could do together and, you know, go out and throw the ball and all this. But I didn't take to, I loved baseball, but I didn't take to it. I was having more fun in the dugout making people laugh and telling stories and being more animated. And my dad raised me on classic TV. I don't think I saw a color TV show until I was like,
wow.
you know, 8 years old. Because we
would have a color TV.
Well, but we were always watching the Munsters and all of these old shows. And he introduced me to Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, Abbott and Costello, the Marx Brothers, Charlie Chaplin, the classics of comedy. And when I saw, I was really into Abbott and Costello, but when I saw Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, something clicked in me. And I mean, it's so funny because I was so young when I saw this, but still something in my brain went, that's what I want to do.
Do you remember exactly the moment?
It was a movie called The Caddy. And it was because I loved making people laugh.
Okay.
I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to act. I didn't know. We grew up in Orange County. We weren't in Hollywood. We weren't in LA. None of my family was in the business. So I didn't know if that was ever a possibility. But I knew I wanted to be funny and make people laugh. But I also had this obsession with music. My dad was always playing Elvis and the Beatles and Buddy Holly and the Rolling Stones and Queen and all of these bands in the house and the Beach Boys. And I think one of the first things I did when I was like 2 or 3 years old, and I would get up on the coffee table and he would play the Beach Boys and I would sing, you know, Surfing USA and Surfing Safari. And so I had this passion for music. I hadn't started playing music yet, but I had this passion for music. So when I saw Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, I went, wait a second. Dean Martin is this singer and he's belting out these beautiful songs, but then there's this clown next to him that's being wild and crazy and making people laugh. I was like, man, if I could combine those two guys, that would be my dream.
Wow.
And so my dad ended up, he was in a session for counseling for the marriage, and he picked up a magazine, and at the back of the magazine there was an advertisement basically saying, you know, Hollywood connection. Does your kid want to act? You know, your kid want to be in movies or something like that.
How old were you at that moment?
I was about 5.
Okay.
And my dad kept the magazine and he's like, wait a second, maybe that might be something that Drake would be interested in doing. And so he came home one day and he said, hey, would you like to be in, would you want to be on TV? Would you want to be making movies and all this? And I thought, are you kidding me? Like, this would be amazing. Get to go on, get to do what I love. Like, I didn't even know that was possible. And so he got us a meeting with a manager, and she was asking me, you know, would you want to be in the commercial showing off these awesome toys and eating these sugary cereals and all of this?
Popsicles.
And popsicles. That was actually interesting you say that. That was my first commercial I got.
Wow.
Was for a washer and dryer company. Okay. And I had to sit down on a tree stump and eat popsicles, and the popsicle had to drip onto my shirt, and then my mom washes it and it takes the stain out. Well, we have to do take 1, take 2, different angles. And so I'm 5 years old, and I'm eating these popsicles, and they're like, all right, we got to do another one. Here's your popsicle. I'm like, okay, we got to do another one. Here's your popsicle. I go, wait a minute. Free popsicles? I'm in. Dad, let's do this.
5 years old. Wow.
and just getting popsicles handed to me, and I was like, I'm in heaven. I'm like, this is the business for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your father gives you a lot of tools And do they have a rough moment after divorce?
They weren't the best of friends.
Okay.
So it was difficult, and nothing against my parents, because I know that, you know, they were dealing with their own things, but it was difficult because they weren't getting along. I would be at my mom's house and my mom would be saying something about my dad, and, you know, your dad's this, your dad's that. My dad would say your mom's this, and I've discussed this with them recently and which I've brought into my relationship with my son, and our situation is hopefully, and maybe it was a blessing that I experienced that so that I don't repeat it. But it made me feel, and I don't think I knew it at the time, but looking back, it made me feel like, wait a minute, but I'm half of him and I'm half of her. And if you say he's this and you say she's this,
exactly.
Well, then
You're talking about me.
What am I?
You're talking a little bit about me.
Yeah. So I think that that's something I've realized later in life, and have been able to work through and figure out that, you know, maybe a lot of what I felt about myself stemmed from what was being said around me, not necessarily who I truly and really was. But so it wasn't the best, but luckily I had this great creative outlet. You know, I loved acting. As soon as the lights went on and I was able to enter a different world and escape and just play different characters, and I was that was sort of my escape
of course
throughout my life.